Man, are we in Arizona or what? It is hot. It is dry. It's been 2.5 weeks that I haven't cut my grass yet. That goes to show the procrastination that I've sat at right now as we stand here today. Welcome in, everybody. I'm going to get off my high horse of things that I haven't done because I don't get all stressed out. This is the Gem City Sports Podcast. So happy to have you in on a Wednesday night. We talk all things local, high school, college, NFL, all things local sports, and we are proudly presented as always by Redbridge Investments, keeping financial guidance simple. If you want more info, head over to their website, www.redbridgeinvestments.com, or you can simply click on their website and then give them a call, 814-734-3433, 814-734-3433. My man Nick Gartman is joining us in the studio today. It's the two of us, Nick, and you've got one more show before you head off to the Outer Banks. But I'll tell you what, man, I'm going there next year, so I don't know if you've ever been there before. I'm sure you have, but you got to give me some pointers as to where to go.
Oh, I'll give you the pointers, the places to go, the places to eat, for sure. We've been going, we probably go every other year. My wife and I were actually engaged there. We got married there, so the Outer Banks is a very special place for us. So, looking forward to, I loaded up my training camp podcasts, and I'm getting ready to make that drive and just get ready for some football on the beach. Nothing better.
So I'm curious, if you don't mind just sharing some insight, how did you go about the proposal? Was it a secret? Was it more of like she knew it was going to happen? But no, I'm curious to hear how Caitlin went about, you and Caitlin went about this.
It depends on who you ask the question. Let me just say it wasn't up to the level it should have been. We'll just leave it at that.
Hey, it's the thought that counts, right?
That's what I say. I don't necessarily win that fight, though.
Hey, man, that's all that matters. It's clearly gone well for you, so no need to worry about it. Well, before Nick leaves, we got a great show planned. We're going to break down what we think, Nick, are our top 5 most interesting high school football teams. Not necessarily the ones we think are going to do the best, but what do we think will be the most intriguing storylines for teams, right? Whether it's a team that we thought underperformed last year that could be on the opposite side this year, maybe teams that lost a bunch of seniors, right, that are going to have to regroup, or some teams with new or in what I think we'll talk about a little bit later on, familiar coaches that come back now after having in their mind what was a couple of subpar seasons. A lot of that going on tonight. Also going to talk Bills, kind of building off of our Monday show. Big question with Khalil Shakir, her, James Cook, and a contract dispute. Should the Bills just go get Terry McLaurin? We're going to break down those question marks tonight too, because I think there's a lot of teams out there who could want him and only a few who can afford him. Buffalo might be one of those teams. And later on in the show, we have a pre-taped interview. I'm talking with Gary Dawn, a General McLean grad and a guy who's been around GM in Fort LaBeouf Athletics, who actually wrote a book on the history of GM football in the ECL, Nick. And if that book doesn't convince you that the ECL should be brought back, well, I don't really know what will, because there's a really good history in the 4-decade-plus long span that the ECL was in operation. And I learned some things about GM, my alma mater, that I didn't know. So there you go.
I have yet to pick up my copy, but I'm telling you, it's going to be, I was going to say summer reading list, but man, my classes start here at the end of this month. I don't know if it hit my summer. Maybe my winter reading list, we'll pick it up and pull it out, because it sounds like a good one from what I hear.
I feel like your summer reading list involves all of your final exams or final projects that you have the kids do, and then any other book that you have after that, you're like, yeah, I don't have time for it. I don't really want to read this.
Exactly. Just set it to the side. That's August's problem.
Well, Red and White in the ECL era is the name of the book, so make sure to grab your copy in a few minutes. But, Nick, it's wild to me, because I've said for a long time, and I firmly believe this, that at some point down the road, we're going to be playing football games like August 1st.
Oh, yeah.
High school football is at a point now where we're getting to mid-August when we're starting games, but 2 weeks from Friday, and I don't know if there's a Thursday game or two, forgive me if there is, but we'll just say 2 weeks from Friday is really the unofficial start of high school football season, where we got a lot of great games in week number 1. But I thought it would be neat tonight to list our top 5 most interesting teams. And again, the criteria for this is broad, right? Because we talked all about this last year. Region 5, Region 6, went in depth for probably 45, 50 hours a week talking about high school football, those two regions in particular. But there are a lot of teams that we said at the end of last year that we really thought would take another step next year. And so I'm wondering if any of those teams will be on the list. But again, this could be teams that need a reset because they lost a lot of seniors, teams that maybe have new coaches, teams that were right on the cusp of a playoff berth last year that just didn't quite get there, or in a couple of teams' cases, squads that weren't really perennial powers in their region or class that went and rose to the top last year. So we got a great list for you, a great set. I can't wait. I painstakingly went through a lot of teams. I have like 10 in case. I mean, we could pick the same ones, but I don't want to say I was an overachiever here, but I really couldn't limit it to 5. But we'll limit it to 5 for this show, Nick. 5 for each of us, and we'll start with your number 5. On Nick's list of most interesting high school football teams just a couple of weeks before the season started. I'm really interested to see where you went with this list.
So I'm going to... Man, I was hoping you would go first. So
Do you want me to go first? I'll go first.
No, I'll go first because I got a
right.
bunch too. I think, starting off with number 5, and again, this is not necessarily in a particular ranked order, but just teams that I'm curious to watch. And, all right, let's do it. Let's start with GM. And I didn't want to start with GM because I feel like I always start with GM, but I was so on top of the ZZ Top train last year, and it was so much fun to cover Isaac and Jacob Zeitz and their record-setting quarterback wide receiver season. Excited to see where they, how they perform getting into the PSAC now over at Clarion. But there's a big hole there in the offense. I mean, it was a record-setting offense. So how do you run that back, right? I mean, well, for starters, Jared Corwin coming back, that's a great start. He seems to be a Navy commit, 48 catches for 6'11" and 7 TDs last year. That's a good place to start.
Guy.
That's a good place to start. Right, 100%. So it'll just be curious to see if he can build a connection with new quarterback Matt Caro. We should have probably brought Wayne Bradford on to ask him this question, but I'm excited to see how they're going to bounce back in, I was going to say year 2, but in their follow-up season here.
Yeah, I had GM on my list as well. I don't know if I was going to put them up there at number 5, but I agree with you with GM. I think the most interesting thing with them is the fact that they lose the Zeitz kids, but and I don't know if this would have happened last year, but I think just from what I hear internally that there was a really big argument to be made that Matt Caro would have been the quarterback last year anyway. That he was maybe a better all-around fit than Isaac Zeitz, but I think Isaac probably, just from my vision, what I saw, he had more smarts down the field. I think Matt Caro, you're going to see, has got a better arm. He certainly can zig it and put it in areas that Isaac Zeitz probably couldn't. And I think that you're going to see the offense might actually be even more efficient under Matt Caro, if you can hardly believe that.
Sure.
So I'm with you there. GM is definitely on my list. It's not at number 5. I tried to go in order as best I could, so I'll save them and a couple of other players to mention a little bit later on the list. So I'll start with my number 5. This one's way off the board. This is not a team that I don't think is going to contend for a district championship. I'm not even sure if they're going to make the playoffs. And to be quite frank, they did lose a decent amount of guys from last year, but I really like what Manny Johnson is doing at Iroquois.
Yeah. And
he is somebody that, since he came to the school, has been a steadfast, command the ship sort of hand that the Braves haven't had. And so I think the biggest advantage they have is Cole Bennett comes back for his senior season. That's a huge win for the Braves. He's a big quarterback that can move the ball down the field, and he can run. I mean, he doesn't look like a runner, but he certainly, for the load of lumber that he has, he can move. And I think that that's going to be really key. They do lose a couple of weapons from last season, but I do think that they have enough in the pipeline with what Manny's doing there to be able to be competitive. Keep in mind, this team won 3 games last year. I'm not saying that it's record-setting, but Iroquois, in the years previous, had been used to winning nothing in maybe 1 game. And so I think the big question for them this season is, can they take another step where they can win one of those games they're not supposed to, right? Union City, Kennedy Catholic, Northwestern were their 3 wins. You could argue maybe Northwestern was a game that they could have been an underdog in. Now the big question that I have is, when you look at the Senecas of the world, the Mercyhurst Preps of the world, could they pick off a team early in the season? Remember, they nearly beat Eisenhower in week 3. And they gave Conneaut a run for their money in week number 2 on the road. So it's not necessarily that this team is, I think, that far off. And I don't think by any stretch of the imagination, Nick, that they're a District 10 championship contending team. I hope I'm proven wrong. But I think to win 5 or 6 games in a season for Iroquois, for Manny Johnson to do that would be wonders for them. And so I have them sneaking in at number 5 because I think you're going to see Manny Johnson and Iroquois take off as long as he's there. And maybe this is the year, maybe it's not. But I think bold prediction is that they improve from their win total from last season. I think they get at least 4, maybe 5.
No, I like that. I mean, you think okay, their leading rusher last year was Trayvon Scott. I haven't seen anything that he's not coming back. So if he takes a leap forward for his senior year, and then other than their last 3 games where they got blown out 42-6, 33-0, 56-14, and that was a brutal stretch. Mercyhurst Prep with Vinny Feliciano, who I'm sure we'll talk about later on this show, Seneca, and then Harbor Creek. Those are tough games. So you're right. I think if you play those games a little more closely, I think you're thinking about Iroquois very differently. That's a good one. I definitely didn't have them on my list. So good job by you.
And I do think too that the nice thing is Ethan Alderson, I believe, is also coming back for his senior season. He was, I think, their second leading receiver on the season. They do lose their senior standout that they had. I just think the problem with Iroquois last year is their offensive line just didn't give Cole Bennett any time to throw the football. I mean, he had defenders in his face 99% of the time. I think if they can get a little bit more protection up front, then they're going to be in really good shape. But Manny's got an offensive background. He's done this before at bigger schools in the area. I really like it. So I've got Iroquois at number 5. And I'll give you some time for number 4, Nick. I'll go here with number 4 so that way you can prepare.
You're good. I like it.
I like the snake idea. This is where I'm going to put GM. I'm going to put GM at number 4, and I go back to Matt Caro as the catalyst. But more than Matt Caro, think about the weapons that they get back. You know, we talk about, okay, you lose Jacob Zeitz, Teague Berger is gone, but Caden Hollier there in the tight end spot, also as a defensive end linebacker, he comes back. I know that Wayne Bradford, if he was on this show, would talk about this guy night in, night out. Cohen Beachley comes back, who got a decent lion's share of carries late in the season when GM was blowing teams out. Remember, the guys I'm talking about right now got a lot of playing time because GM was just crushing teams, and they needed their backups to get, essentially had their backups come in and some playing time. Kyle McConnell on the outside, he comes back. And not to mention Jackson Kaiser, who will probably hit leadoff for the baseball team this year and was a big part of the baseball team last year. He will be at wide receiver as well and will be a big part of this. PJ Mitchell is another one, too, that you could put in the receiver spot, maybe even the backfield. And again, Jared Corwin, to your point. Biggest question that I have for GM is the line. You saw in the Save an Eye game, right? The whole starting offensive line was GM kids. They need to replace nearly everybody up there. And so how will Marshall McCormick tailor his offense so that you have more quick passes, RPO option runs, which is what they do, but you just have to be, I think, Nick, more strategic and smart as to how you get the ball out of Caro's hands, because the second he holds it, I don't think that line's going to be able to hold up like they did last year. That would be my concern for GM this season, is the offensive line, and that Meadville, which again, they're staring down the barrel of Meadville in the 4A championship game again just because of the restructuring from last season. Meadville likes to run the ball. They like to win the game of the trenches. So that has to be the focal point through weeks 1 through 10 for GM if they want to get back to another state playoff berth. No,
I like it. I mean, signed, sealed, delivered. Absolutely. All right, let me go with my number 4. I'll push us along here. Number 4, and this is just a team that I'm curious to see what the return of head coach Mike Mishler looks like. And I'm going with the Cathedral Prep Ramblers here at 4. And Mishler is a legend in Erie. He's a guy that I heard about before I even started getting into sports radio here in Erie. I mean, the guy has 5 state championships in 8 state championship appearances. The guy knows his way around a football team, around a training camp, and knows how to get to that state championship. Last year, Prep 7-4, good season, maybe not a typical Cathedral Prep season that you would expect to come from them. They do have some seniors who have moved on, but they're bringing back their quarterback, David Friedman, will come back after a pretty good junior year. He threw for over 1,300 yards and 18 touchdowns. Can he take that step forward? I look for Desiree Carson to take that step forward as well. He rushed for 632 yards, splitting time in and out while Charbel Lattouf dealt with some things along the way. So I think they have the offensive power to bring with them. There's a great article on Go Erie today that talks about the coaches that he's brought with him. He's established an all-star team of coaches. And I'm just curious to see, could this be the spark that turns around and brings Prep Rambler football back into the headlines? Well, the buck stops at Mike Mishler, right? Anywhere he's gone, he wins. He's got 5 state championships, to your point. He's been in the state championship game nearly two-digit time. I think 8 is the number in terms of state final appearances. Yep. I mean, the guy knows how to win. And
I tell this story, I don't know if I've told it on the podcast before, when I was still working at the TV station. And last year we got the news that Mike Mishler was going to come back and be the offensive coordinator for Cathedral Prep. And I looked at John Leidick that day as soon as I got the news, and I said, well, you're looking at the new future head coach of Cathedral Prep, because he's not coming back to be the OC if he's not eventually going to be the head coach.
Sure.
I think, to me, Matt Oblick is the straw that stirs the drink, both on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. He can play linebacker. He can play in the secondary, really wherever they need him to be for Coach Mishler. He's also a decent threat at the wide receiver spot. Keep an eye. I do think it's going to be Friedman that starts. Keep an eye on KJ Williams. This is he's a big, bulky, hard to get down quarterback that I think, if used properly, could really be a great third and short guy, red zone guy that Cathedral Prep could throw in there.
Yeah.
And as we know, prep teams under Mishler, they convert on opportunities.
Right.
So I like that team a lot. I don't have them on my list, but I certainly had them as a team to watch, just because I don't think it's going to be to anyone's surprise if Prep does what Prep does under Mike Mishler. Right. But I love the pick because it is such a, who thought that Mike would come back? Well, I thought that Mishler would probably come back. I didn't get to retire for so long. But good pick. I really like it. And I think, again, doesn't matter who Prep has, Mishler's in the helm, so he's going to be a great fit for Prep. Yep, I love it. Good pick at number 4, Nick.
All right. So, it's my turn to snake back around. Number 3. Number 3, I'm going to Erie High, right? And 2 words, Paul Johnson. This is a guy who was really, really interesting to me a couple years ago. Transferred from Mercyhurst Prep, had the rule that was there. They recovered from an injury as well. Mm-hmm. But when he was a sophomore at Mercyhurst Prep, you saw flashes of talent. Maybe a little raw as a sophomore, but I was really curious what he was going to bring to Erie. Obviously couldn't play. So now that he's running it back for his senior season, I'm curious. I said this a couple times last year. I said, I think Erie High is a year away from being able to compete and take down Titans like McDowell and Prep. Now we just talked about Mishler at Prep. That's going to be a tough team. I'll be curious. McDowell almost made this list for me because I'm just, they lost everybody this year. What is that offense going to look like when you lose Blaze Meyer, Stephon Baby Porter, Ziegler? So I think Erie is going to contend this year, and I think it's going to come down to Paul Johnson. Can he take that senior leadership role? He seemed to be just poised for a breakout season. So I'm just really interested in watching Erie High football this year.
It's a great pick. And, Jonathan Williams and I stood on the sideline and we watched that game from start to finish. And we said there's no reason Erie shouldn't have been in and potentially have won that game. Erie loses a lot more than people think. It starts up with Geo Crosby on the outside. They lose a lot of their wing weapons from last season. It would have been wonderful. I understand the rules and the regulations that keep Paul from playing in postseason and things of that nature. It would have been wonderful to see him be the quarterback of this team last year with the talent that they had. Yeah. Especially when we saw him play week 1 a little bit. I believe it was against Cathedral Prep, and he just made some throws that a couple of them ended up being intercepted, but he's a guy who's not afraid to make the throw that's in a tight window. And I think with experience, this being the year of experience for him, I think he will get there. But I like it. Erie's not on my list, but certainly a very interesting team to watch. It's funny, Nick, because the team that I have at number 3 is the team they'll play for the 6A championship at McDowell. How does Aaron Slocum deal with losing nearly every single starter on both sides of the football is a big question.
Who's left? Who's left at McDowell? Sorry, go ahead.
It's so fascinating. I do think the biggest key for McDowell, as has always been the key, whether it was under whatever tutelage, whatever coach you want to talk about, that was the case there for the Trojans, and now under Coach Aaron Slocum. The offensive line is where you stir the drink. And I think that as long as McDowell is good up front, admittedly, I don't know all what they have, but I do believe they had some freshman and sophomore from last season that saw a little bit of playing time, and that could be huge. They're going to have to be stout up front in spades this year, more so than they were in previous seasons, because you lose your top quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. Whoever is the cue for McDowell this season, I think if you're Coach Slocum, what you really have to do is simplify things. Because, you think about it, even with Blaze Myers and the experience that he had, Nick, they weren't trying to light the world on fire with crazy deep crossing routes and things that were confusing. They ran a college-style offense, and they ran it smartly, and they didn't force Blaze to make any crazy decisions unless they were down big in games. I think McDowell has to simplify it this year. They've always been great at running in between the tackles. Just do that again this year. There's no reason, even with the loss of guys that you have, that you can't find a way to be successful in the run game, and then lean on some of the guys that made some big plays that will come back this season. Not everybody, but a few. To me, it's probably Evan Kuhn, Lucas Salt that may compete for that. I don't know if there's anybody else internally, but whoever it is, just make it simple. Keep it simple and keep it straightforward, and I think McDowell gives himself a pretty good chance to contend again.
Nope, I like it. They were my 5A, 5B between them and GM. I just think it's going to be interesting to watch to see what they do. Who's going to emerge as that go-to playmaker for them this year? Because they're going to have one. It's just we can't really predict who it's going to be.
Yeah, I agree. So there we go. Top three are the first three on our top 5 list. We got 2 more. These are hard. And I want to make a caveat, too. We're not really factoring in many of the teams in Warren County or Venango County. Again, we know... oh, there you go. We know the Sharons, the Hickories of the world are going to be powerhouses. Greenville there, too, Farrell, right? I mean, those are pretty obvious. I just don't feel like putting them, for me, on my list because I just don't cover them as much, and I don't feel it's fair to do that. So here's my number 2. This team, I think, more than any, to me, it's is it a one-year fluke or is it something that's reality? And we saw this guy coach in June at the Save an Eye game. Corey is number 2 on my list of top 5 most interesting teams. How do you lose your quarterback and your star wide receiver and your star running back and be able to make it to the top as you did last year in your region? I think the big question for Jeff Goodwill is going to be what the team looks like in terms of strategy. I do think that they will have, as we know, they have a few guys coming back, not a lot. Lamek Albers is probably their top running back from last season that returns. Dion Kennedy had a couple of big breaking carries. I think he averaged almost 6 yards a carry, if I'm correct on that, in the way that he played last year when he did have the ball. But they're gonna have to make it happen on offense. Their defense was a lot better than people give them credit for. I think getting Keaton Forcina back is absolutely huge. Blake Cook returns as well in the receiving department. But the big question going to be, if it is Lucas Baker, who will be a senior this year at quarterback, is he capable of being even part of what Nolan Carey was? I would love to see Corey be a powerhouse. I think it shook up Region 5 so much last year with the 3-way tie at the top between them, Fort LaBeouf, and Fairview. If we get something like that again this year where it runs back, I think it would be amazing. And I think Jeff Goodwill's got something going really well. At Corey, obviously, he deserved, to me, to be the county coach for the Save an Eye All-Star game. But the big question is, who do you replace? And I think this is the first year last season where we saw Corey break out. I hope it happens again for them. We'll see. Yeah. They got to replace a lot.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, they got to replace a lot, and Region 5 is such a tough division. You just talked about the 3-way tie with Fort LaBeouf and Fairview. They're going to run it back this year. They have 2 stud teams. Didn't make my list here today, but interested in looking at them. Harbor Creek is always dangerous. If you talk to Paul, Girard is always dangerous as well. And Northeast just kind of had a down year last year. Can they rebuild as well? So, I mean, that Region 5 is one of the toughest in D10. So, I mean, I think that's what it's going to come down to. What does their schedule look like, and how do they maintain that new look offense? So that's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, ECL Light in Region 5. What do you got for number 2, Nick?
Number two for me is, how do you follow up a season where you rush for over 2,400 yards? I'm looking at you, Vinny Feliciano, right? You're almost at 2,400 yards, 25 touchdowns. What are you going to do for your junior year season? So I'm interested in watching this guy play football because he's fun to watch play. Anytime you give him the ball, whether it's on your own 2-yard line or at the opponent's 2-yard line, he has the potential to score the ball. Now, outside of that, they're bringing back almost their entire offense. Everett Cotterill, who's a sophomore last year, only passed for 354 yards because when your running back runs for 2,400, you don't need to pass for a whole lot. But he's coming back with more experience. Their top receiver is Feliciano, but everybody else, Tyshawn Tate you lose, but they're still a young team coming back. I think that they have an easy path in the region. I mean, don't get me wrong, Seneca is always tough. We just talked about some teams down there in the southern part of D10, but I think Mercyhurst Prep is a really interesting team to watch, mostly because of Feliciano. I want to see the guy. How can he top this season, his sophomore season, with his junior season?
Man, I am stunned, and I continue to be stunned how Mercyhurst Prep didn't advance further in the playoffs from last season. Maybe they were a one-dimensional team. You could make that argument. It's funny. I'm actually, it's a great pick at number 2, and I think that the sky is the limit for the Dawn. I also think it's very possible you could see a couple of other things mixed in for the Lakers this year. Great pick at number 2, Nick. That's a team that I think we're going to be talking about long into the playoffs for this upcoming season, which brings us to number 1. I can't wait to see who you have at number 1. You've talked about all the teams that at least I can think of, but what do you got? Number 1 on your top 5 most interesting teams, Nick Hartman.
All right, you said you weren't going down south, but I am, and I'm going to Farrell. Because Farrell, this isn't a surprise. Farrell is always good. Except last year was a down year for them. And I say that knowing they went 5-0 in league play and won Region 1. But 7-6.
District 10 championship again.
District 10 championship. But what I'm saying is I think their ceiling is much higher than what it was. And that's scary. And that's why they're interesting to watch for me, right? Jules Johnson had over 1,700 yards on the ground last year, 24 touchdowns, 23 catches. He also has offers. I closed my tab. Akron, Nebraska. I mean, Slippery Rock, but he's got D1 offers. So what can he bring up? Could he be another 4,000-yard D10 rusher? I absolutely think that's within his realm of possibilities. But then you also have quarterback Aaron, and I'm going to butcher this. Do you know Pegs?
We questioned this throughout the entire year, and I think we said it on TV about 4 different times. So I don't know.
I tell my students, if I learn your names by midterms, I'm doing good. So this is just another one of those situations. But the guy threw for over 1,600 and 16 touchdowns. He also has D1 looks, from Akron and stuff like that. So this is going to be an impressive dual threat backfield. Like I said, don't hear what I'm not saying. They performed well last year, but I think that's their floor. I want to see what these 2 D1 caliber weapons in the backfield, can they be that team that their ceiling is then state championship?
I mean, let's be honest. The losses that Farrell had were to Hickory, Fort LaBeouf, Ursuline, Sharon, Cathedral Prep, and then their state playoff game.
Yep.
I mean, realistically, the only one that you maybe scratch your head about is Fort LaBeouf. And as we saw at the beginning of last season, they were the comeback kings, right? Fort LaBeouf late in games.
Yeah.
That happened on a late 2-point conversion. Okay, you throw that one out the window.
Yeah.
It's an unbelievable. It's a great pick. It's easy, I think, to say Farrell because of the way that their prowess has been in the history of D10.
Yeah.
But to your point, Nick, for them, probably a down season, right? In the way that they ended, and I think they're going to be right back at the District 10 title picture again this year, no question, in 2A. Yep. And I think they're going to play my number 1 most interesting team, which is your number 2 in Mercyhurst Prep. Vinny Feliciano, to me, could probably hit 3,000 yards in a season, and I wouldn't be shocked.
No, I don't think so either.
And I think the one thing I love about Jeff Root, and it's great, I get to actually call a few of their games this season, so I'm going to get to see Vinny Feliciano up close and personal to start the season when they travel to Sharon in week 1. That's going to be a hell of a game. I cannot wait for that game to see what the benchmark is for Mercyhurst Prep. Probably a game that I don't think they're expected to win, but it would be great to see what the competitive level is against a school a class above you. Regardless, I think Vinny Feliciano can do so many things that are just besides running the ball, right? We saw him take punts and kicks back for touchdowns. He can split out wide. He can go in jet motion. So even though it's one player, you can put him in so many different situations if you're Jeff Ruth that it looks like he is 5 players at once out there. And the sky is the limit for what he can do, what he's capable of. And I'll tell you what, man, to see Farrell and Mercyhurst Prep at the D10 championship game, which I believe would be, it would be a rematch from 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You know they want that rematch. Without being in that locker room, there was a lot of frustration, I'm sure, with the green and white when they lost to Sharpsville in that semifinal game. They wanted to crack at Farrell badly. And I really think they believed they would have had a shot. And that was a 10-point game between Farrell and Sharpsville in the D10 championship game. So I think if there is the least bold of bold predictions, it's that Farrell and Mercyhurst Prep are going to be in the D10 2A championship game, and I'm here for it. So
me too. Fireworks.
Great list. I think you'd see a lot of points in that game, even though the last time that they played in D10 championship, it was a really low-scoring affair. So great pick. I go Mercyhurst Prep at 1. You go Farrell at 1. And, man, D10 football is going to be loaded again this year. No question, Nick.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, throw out Hickory was another one I was looking at. Kelvin Morrison, over 1,400 yards. Dude's got offers from Ohio State, Miami, Maryland, Florida. I closed my tab again. Oh, no, here it is. Yeah, I mean, 5 different D1 teams. I mean, one of the top prospects in high school right now. The running backs in District 10 this year, let's just lump them into an interesting category because you're going to be rushing the ball a ton across the district. Interested in that, for sure.
Yeah, a couple honorable mentions as well that I'm sure we didn't get a chance to talk about, but we will. A couple of Crawford County teams. I wanted to throw Sagertown in there. I think Meadville will be much improved. They were really young last year, and I think it'll be much more competitive with GM there sitting in 4A. I also think, too, you look at Cambridge Springs, who loses a lot of their offensive firepower from last year, minus Brett Kania, who is going to be a focal point of that offense. I do think that will be a very interesting team as well under head coach Nate Liberty, who is one of my personal favorite head coaches, and I think he does a great job. So Crawford County going to be very competitive as well, no question about it. Can't wait to see how that works out. High school football, man, 2 weeks plus a little bit away.
Let's go.
You want to make sure you get that vacation in because then it's going to be chaos from here, but a good kind of chaos.
Listen, I love that kind of chaos.
Hey, we're all for it. We're here for the chaos, but we're not here for the chaos for financial services because we got Rebich Investments and we're all set to go as we are every single week. Rebich Investments keep financial guidance simple. If you want more info, go to their website, www.rebichinvestments.com, or call their number during normal business hours, 814-734-3433, 814-734-3433. All right, Nick, let's talk more football. Let's talk Bill. Should we be worried? I'm not worried. Are you worried?
Oh, I'm worried.
Oh, you are?
Oh, I'm definitely worried.
All right, so let's dive into this, right? We talked about this a bit on Monday. Khalil Shakir is hurt, high ankle sprain. That's never a good sign, right? High ankle sprain is the same as a torn ACL in the NFL nowadays. James Cook wants a contract better than Saquon Barkley. At least that's what I'm putting out in the ether right there. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I've always worried, maybe not publicly, that while Buffalo is a great team of skill on defense, they're a little thin on offense. Yeah. And I now think we're starting to see the cracks in the armor with Shakir hurt and with James Cook holding in, for lack of a better word. What's your concern, Nick, with the Buffalo Bills at this point?
So my concern is what do you have going for you on offense right now other than Josh Allen? Right? Your whole season is hinging on Josh Allen. Now, don't hear what I'm not saying. The guy is incredible. Superman. Sorry, Cam Newton. But what are you going to, like, how you can't be that one-dimensional in the NFL right now, and that's what Buffalo looks like. You know, early on in the offseason, their GM was saying, you know, why are we worried about our offense? We did so well with the team we have. We're essentially running it back. And I agreed at that point. But now when I pull up their depth chart and I'm sitting here staring at it, and every time I pull it up to look at it in terms of doing show prep, I get more and more worried because I think we are a Shakir or a Coleman injury away from this just being a disaster. Let's say Cook does hold out. I mean, he's going to lose a lot of money. He's not going to get Saquon money because I think they have a guy in Ray Davis who can be maybe a better runner than what James Cook is. James Cook is a great in the backfield, but catching out of the backfield. But you have Ty Johnson and Darrington Evans. Both are great receiving backs. So I don't end up seeing Cook. You know, if he's going to hold out, I think he's going to end up coming back because he has no leverage, right? Shakir's down with a high ankle sprain. Not what you want from a slot wide receiver who relies on speed. And then outside of Keon Coleman, who's hot, then cold, then hot, then cold, then hot, then cold, I'm nervous. If you have to put everything on Josh Allen this year to make it work, that worries me, and it could end up being disaster season for the Bills this year.
I think what it says about Buffalo in that they're not making any quick moves, and we'll talk about Terry McLaurin in a second because I think Bills fans want to know if he's at all on the radar of Brandon Beane. This is very reminiscent to me of what we see the Chiefs do with Patrick Mahomes, what Tom Brady was in his prime. We've talked about this. I'm not sure Josh Allen needs a stud wide receiver. Right? I mean, Tom Brady, when he was in his prime, outside of Randy Moss, just didn't have that number one guy to throw the football to. And my view of this is what Pittsburgh wants to be, but they don't have the quarterback, right? If you have a stud who's a dual threat guy who find whoever is open, be open, do you really need that stud wide receiver? So to me, Khalil Shakir is not the issue. He's week to week. I think he'll probably be back in time for the regular season, just if I had to guess. Even if he's not, it's going to be week 2 or 3, right? So it's not going to be a huge issue. Maybe they'll lose week 1 on SNF to Baltimore, but even so, you can win 14 games or whatever. To me, it's James Cook. And I am more of concern than I think you are, because while I think Ray Davis and Ty Johnson are amicable running backs, I do not think they are the level that James Cook is. Specifically with how the Bills run their offense. We've seen Joe Brady in the last, I'd say, 8 games of the season try to incorporate the run a little bit more. But when Buffalo's at their best, James Cook is either catching passes or it's an RPO. And so I don't think, certainly not Ray Davis, maybe more Ty Johnson, but I don't think either of those two guys, Nick, are capable of being what James Cook is in the offense. If he holds out, and I do think at some point they'll get a contract done, but if this gets to the start of the regular season and Buffalo becomes almost a pass-only option team, the one thing that has always killed the Bills' offense when they get into big games is asking Josh Allen to be everything, including running the football.
Sure.
And I don't know if I think it can be done for 12, 13, 14 games. Can't be done in playoffs. So to me, James Cook has to get this deal done. I don't agree with anybody who's talking about trading him. I think that's a terrible mistake because you just don't have that much talent behind him.
No.
And
you're not going to get much for him. Who's looking for a top running back right now?
Yeah, and that team would have to pay him anyway. So I think the James Cook deal, Nick, to me I'm more concerned about that getting done, honestly, than I am Shakir coming back.
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting. I mean, I disagree, but just because I love Ray Davis, I think I hear what you're saying about Cook being more of that passing back in terms of how they run their offense. I mean, he fits that offense a little better. I think Ray Davis is the better runner. But what you said is exactly what I'm saying. Allen, can you expect him to be the center point of the offense for 18 games, right? And you're going to need it because they have a heavy schedule this year. Start off against Baltimore, like you said. Sure, then you got to play the Jets in Miami, New Orleans, New England, maybe a little bit of a slow stretch there. But the back half of the season, you got to go. You got Kansas City at home, which is great. You got to go to Houston, go to Pittsburgh. It's a little bit tougher of an end of season stretch. So when you get down to playing Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Philly, you need Josh Allen to be 100%. And if he is the only part of your offense, I think the defense can start to slow him down and scheme him out. Defenses can start to slow him down and scheme him out. So that worries me as part of their success. Now, what does worry mean to you, Isaac? I mean, to me, it means, okay, they're still going to win the division. They're still going to make the playoffs. But I don't see them making a deep playoff run.
I don't know if I don't see him making a deep playoff run. This is the scenario that would scare the living daylights out of me if I'm a Bills fan. And I'm not, but I covered them for 3 years. And I watched them for 25, 30 games. When they lost football games, it was not because of the offense. It was because the defense couldn't make a stop late.
Sure. Yep.
Specifically Kansas City. And here's what would scare the living daylights out of me. Is you get back to the AFC Championship, maybe the divisional round, you got a Baltimore, you got a Kansas City. Let's say, for sake of argument, it's the Chiefs. And it's 20-17, and your defense gets a stop with 2 minutes to go in the football game. And you don't have the offensive personnel to be able to march it down the field.
Right.
That would, to me, be the biggest rip the heart out of the body experience for Bills fans.
Yeah.
Because all this time in your big games, you have trusted Josh Allen, and deservedly so, because he's made those plays to bring home touchdowns.
Yes.
But I do think, specifically against Kansas City, and maybe even against Baltimore too, these defenses aren't going to stop Allen completely from running, but they're good enough to slow him down.
Yep.
And for me, I mean, James Cook nearly averaged 5 yards a carry last season.
Yeah,
he's
a great running back.
We joked. Every time you give the ball to James, you're automatically halfway towards the first down. Like,
right.
it's a guarantee every single play, whether the lane's there or not.
Yep.
So I understand that you don't want to give him Saquon money, but if you have to overpay for him a little bit, Brandon Beane's comment about he has to fit into an umbrella, not be a column comment, I get it to an extent because, again, you're over the cap. You want to make sure that things work for years to come.
Yeah.
But, man, you're in your Super Bowl bubble. Like, if you got to pay him $1.5 million, $2 million extra a year for a 3 or 4 year deal, like, it's at the end of the day, it's not going to kill you. I don't know if I would really be lollygagging over a couple mil per year if I'm Brandon Beane. But, again, Maybe I'm wrong.
So you just made my final point for me. And my final point why I'm so worried is because this team is Super Bowl or bust. Because I think the expectation is they win the Super Bowl or this is a failed year. And with the team that they are currently putting out there, it lacks depth. You know, you're one or two more injuries on both sides of the ball to not making the playoffs, right? I mean, well, you'll get in because you're going to win the division. It's a pretty rough division, although I do like New England as a bounce back candidate this year. But that's my point is this team is Super Bowl or bust, or it is trouble in Buffalo. I don't know if that means head coach. I don't know if that means what. Are they going to blow up the team and then start to try to retool quickly with Josh Allen? I don't know what it is. But this team is not, right now, in my opinion, built to win the Super Bowl. And this team, in terms of what the fan base and everybody expects of them, is Super Bowl. That worries me.
So right now, if you look at the top 10 highest paid running backs in the league of average annual value, David Montgomery, if I'm looking at this correct, is 10th. He makes 9.125. If you gave James Cook, let's play this game, Nick. Is James Cook a better running back than James Conner?
I don't know. Conner, no. I'm going to say no.
You're not making this fun. He is.
I know. Well, no, I'm making it right.
Is he a better running back than Joe Mixon?
Yes.
Is he a better running back than Aaron Jones?
Yes.
Is he a better running back than Josh Jacobs?
No.
Okay, so Aaron Jones makes $10 million.
Yeah.
If you gave him 9.75 or 10,
come here.
Is that really a? See, he's going to agree with me.
Look at this, Eli. Are the Bills in trouble this year? Should we worry about that? He didn't know we were.
Say no, Eli.
He didn't know we were taping. Say yes. Are the Buffalo Bills in trouble this year? Are you worried about the Bills? Oh, he shut down.
He's not worried.
He didn't know we were taping.
He's got no worry. Nick, that is no fear. You know what? That's the look of somebody who knows that James Cook should probably just be paid $10 million a year and we just get this done and over with.
What do you think? You want to stay here? Should we pay James Cook $10 million a year?
I didn't say $10.
$10 million. You think he only needs $10?
How about
he only needs $10. $10. That's the contract.
I think you should get with Brandon Bean. I think Brandon Bean, when this clip posts, should get on the phone with you, Eli, and I think that they would probably hire you as GM tomorrow.
But no, to go back to your point, so you're right. I think that Josh Jacobs line. You know, so then you're looking at what? He's the 7th best running back, 8th best running back in the league right now?
Sure.
I think Josh Jacobs' money is too much. But look at that. I'm looking at the same list you are, right? Josh Jacobs means 48 million annual value.
Yep.
And Aaron Jones is sitting at about 20. You know, I think 20 is probably the right price for a guy like for James Cook. But the problem is, you know, according to Over the Cap, they're only sitting, and I know James Cook is going to take up some money in this, and I know as Paul will tell you, the salary cap is mythical. They have less than $1 million in total salary cap as it stands right now. So I don't know that they have the money to get it done.
But they do. I mean, look, if they have the money to trade for Terry McLaurin, which you know that they would do if they had that opportunity, they have the money to pay James Cook. Here's the other thing, too. He'd be the youngest running back at the top 10. He's 25.
Facts. Yep. He's still got some years left. They say 28's the age cliff for running back. So, yeah, I agree.
You have a stud, pay the stud.
Yep.
Get it over with. Get it done. Don't worry about it. Get this team back on track. Get them circling the wagons like they want to win the Super Bowl because you know they got to get there and they got to beat Kansas City. So the math is simple, Brandon Bean. I think get it done for all Bills fans out there. Nick, man, I hope you have an awesome vacation. I'm so excited for you. Again, give me some pointers. Let me know the best beaches to go to, or maybe actually, you know what? Give me the best channels to kayak and jet ski.
Oh, we'll do some scouting for you. We got a great place where we're going. Where we're staying is right along, the Bay Area where we'll do some kayaking stuff. So I'll send you some pictures. We'll do some scouting. All right. You going to do some scouting for Isaac? You want to go kayaking? No. Yeah? I'm going to boat? No. He'll go on the boat.
I was going to say, it's one of those things you have to warm up to, right? Once you actually get on the boat, then it's pretty good.
Exactly.
Well, have fun, you two. Great stuff as always. We will see Nick back, not next week, but the week after if he still chooses to come back to Erie, which I'm not sure I would if I was going to the Outer Banks. So TBD, my friend. All right, my friend. Enjoy vacation. We'll see you next the week after.
All right. See you.
All right, that is Nick Artman joining us on the show. We are going to get to our interview with Gary Dawn of ELC, or either red and white in the ELC era of the General McLean football history. But before we get to that, though, we want to again thank our sponsor, Rebbage Investments. They keep financial guidance simple. If you want more info, head to their website, www.rebbageinvestments.com, or simply give their phone number a call during normal business hours at 814-734-3433 today. 814-734-3433. Rebbage Investments, keeping financial guidance simple. All right, back on the program here on the Gem City Sports Podcast Network. Very pleased to be joined tonight by a 1983 grad of General McLean. He's been around the area for a long time. He's done some coaching. He's been around almost every stadium that I can imagine, including Fort LaBeouf, all the way up until his retirement just a few years ago. And he is the proud owner of a new book, welcoming in Gary Don to the program. Gary, first of all, it's great to have you on, and I'm sure now probably not as busy, but the last few summers I'm sure have been kind of chaos with getting this book all finished.
Well, thanks, Isaac. It's great to be here. Yeah, it was a lot of fun putting it together, but certainly a lot of work too.
Take me through, there's so much history with high school football in this area, right? And obviously your book is centered around General McLean and the stories that you saw and that you shared. What prompted you to want to write this? Because there's not that many like that out there. Take me through kind of what exactly that process was for you.
Well, 2 years ago, I did a book for Fort LaBeouf that was very similar. We had a guidance counselor at a middle school who had spent years compiling statistics and stuff. And then when he retired, he kind of passed it on to me. So I used that to put the Fort LaBeouf book together. But as I was doing that, I thought to myself, gosh, I wonder what the McLean history is. I was familiar with it, obviously, during the time that I was there. But I was really curious as to see what it was like back in the day. The ECL began in 1956, but McCain and Edinburgh high schools consolidated to form General McLean in 1959. So McLean they played in the ECL from 1959 until its end in 2003. So that was the time period that I focused on.
So let's go back to it. The book, by the way, titled Red and White in the ECL Era, the General McLean Football Story. Of course, there are so many. I mean, I had a chance to read a good portion of it, and, I haven't been alive that long, but even knowing some of the stories when I've been alive is pretty cool to get to go back and see. Take me through that journey of learning about the history of GM. Because you talked about, you did it with Fort LaBeouf. Any team in the ECL previous has a lot of history, but what was it like learning about that and just getting up to speed with, I'm sure, all of the great stories and years and content that you got out of the book?
Well, to me, it was fascinating because I just love local sports history, and in particular ones that I was associated with. So it was really interesting to me to learn how McCain and Edinburgh consolidated. Apparently, back in the day, the superintendent at the time, he had actually considered involving Albion too. So that General McLean school district really could have been huge. But at the time, back in 1959, when they consolidated, there was McCain High School did not offer football, and Edinburgh High School did. So Edinburgh High School actually played in the ECL in 56, 57, 58. But then when McCain came on board, those boys from McLean were able to participate. And Mr. Bob Jameson was the coach at Edinburgh, and then he just continued as head coach at McLean. And then you would think consolidating would make the power, but that league, especially with Fairview and Fort LaBeouf, they were powers at that time and continue to be for a long time. But McLean they gradually improved over the course of time until in 1970 they actually broke through and won their first ECL championship.
What was that? It's funny. I wanted to ask you about just the power of the ECL, right? Because I think for people who grew up in my generation when it essentially wasn't there anymore, right? And now it obviously isn't. They're trying to bring it back, I think, through some regions, but it's not what it used to be. I hate that saying, right, but it's the truth. It's not what it used to be. Take me through in your findings just how good that league was and what it took for GM to get to that point where they were a perennial contender, because it seemed like it did take a long time based on just the level of talent that they had back when they combined schools between McCain and Edinboro.
Yeah. What was the first part of the question again?
Yeah, it just seemed like the league was really competitive and
Okay,
just
you're right.
really
You're right. Yeah.
difficult for GM to break through, right? It just seems like that's kind of how that was when GM became a program combined with McCain and Edinboro.
Right. Oh, it was. It was a tremendously competitive league. Um, and as a matter of fact, throughout the 49-year history of the league, every team was at least competitive and challenging for the ECL championship at one time, if not won the championship at one point. But as far as McLean goes, I think what we saw with them is the gradual increase in enrollment began to separate them. Not to mention the fact that they were blessed with some incredible coaches, with Coach Walker being one. And I think that when he came on board, I think he just took things to another level. So I think we can point to those two things as a stepping stone for the Lancers.
Ken Walker does the forward, by the way. He gives a great introduction to this book. And if you haven't read it yet, again, Red and White in the ECL Era, the story of General McLean football. Author Gary Dunn joining us here on the podcast. Make sure to get your copy today. There are, I'm sure, a bunch of stories and individuals specifically, right, that you've talked to or you've gotten articles from or you've read up on. Who are some of the guys throughout the history of GM? The obvious ones are the coaches, right? Coach Walker, Coach Wells come up in this one a lot. But are there specific players or people when you were researching and writing this book that you really think helped shape the history and the tradition of General McLean football? And if so, I'm curious to hear what some of those players were.
Well, the first player to ever rush for 1,000 yards in a season was a guy by the name of Steve Nolan in 1970, and he was the backbone of that team in 1970 that ran the table, went undefeated, won the first ECL championship for them. But then starting in 1970, there was a series of running backs like Brian Sprague being another one, and I believe he graduated in 74, 75, 76 in that area, and he was tremendous. Late 70s, they kind of more of a mediocre area, but once they hit the 80s and Coach Walker took over, there was just a gradual increase in their competitive. And of course, in the later years, you're talking about David Polk, who was a generational talent, went on to play at Akron. I'm trying to think if maybe he might have been one of the first McLean players to play at the Division I level. And of course, following him, Lincoln Buffalino was a tremendous talent. And of course, Matt Riccomini was probably the best quarterback the Lancers had during that era, at least statistically. So yeah, there was some fantastic talent that came through. And then I would say that the bulk of it towards the later years, and I think that probably points to direction as to why they really started to become more of a power in the ECL at that time.
And as we know, this book details over 4 decades of history. There are plenty of years that this GM team has had great runs, and you've detailed a few of them already. I think the answer is pretty obvious here, and I don't want to harp on anything or whatnot. I mean, again, I know that the ECL was different at that point, but what's the one year that you think was the most successful or the most eye-opening when you wrote this book that sticks out to you as the most successful for GM in the years of the book that you have in here?
Wow. Well, I'll tell you that last year, 2003, the last year of the ECL, was a pretty special year because they ran the table up until about week 7, and then they were on a collision course with. Well, no, looked like they were going to run the table and win the ECL championship. They had an unexpected loss in week 7 to Seneca, which set up the their final game of the year against General McLean. I'm sorry, against Fort LaBeouf, which proved to be, for the ECL championship. But that particular team was loaded with a lot of young talent, and those kids that eventually won the state championship in 2006 were freshmen on that team, but they played a huge role as freshmen, believe it or not, on that 2003 team. There was also a team with Matt Walker, which would have been Coach Walker's son. He was their quarterback, threw for over 1,000 yards. They had a couple of running backs on that same team. I think J.J. Rennick, who rushed for over 1,000. So I believe Jim McAndrew, who I'm pretty sure he was on that same team, one of the best wideouts that McLean ever had. So there was a lot of talent on that particular team. I want to say that was 2008, 2009. Somewhere in that area. I'm sorry, 1998, 1999.
So as we continue along here, I got a couple more for you, Gary, before we let you go. We know rivalries in the ECL are pretty apparent, right? I mean, anybody who's lived in Erie for a long time knows just that there's always that 1 week right on your schedule, whether it's Fairview, Girard, obviously McDowell and Prep, but that's not necessarily ECL. You've been on both sides of General McLean and Fort LaBeouf, and I think this is such a fascinating question because when people ask me, okay, what's the biggest rivalry in Erie County? The obvious answer is McDowell Prep, but I say, look, GM Fort LaBeouf, I would say, is probably number two, and in terms of fan attendance, it could be number one because people flock for that game. You've seen the history of these two teams, and now they're back to playing each other most of the time, given the region and the class disparagements. What was that rivalry like? And for you writing this book, how fascinating was it to get to see the history of the rivalry, knowing that you've seen it on both sides?
I did see it on both sides, and I know when I was in high school, they didn't seem like quite a rival. At least in the sports I played, basketball and baseball, it really wasn't much of a rivalry. And then when I began teaching at LaBeouf, I know those LaBeouf kids, they waited for GM week. And I always wondered, like, does GMs look at LaBeouf as a rival? And I had a chance to talk to one of the coaches at McLean, and I asked him, I said, does GM really look at LaBeouf as a rival? And he said, oh, absolutely. But interestingly enough, talking about rivalries, one of the things that I was really surprised about in doing the research was that in 1969, Girard and Fairview dropped out of the Erie County League and played an independent schedule. And during that time, they were in talks to consolidate to form the new Lakeshore School District, which I thought was really funny because those are two teams that there's no love lost between the two of them. And then in 1971, I think the talks broke off and they just decided to come back in and play as those two teams. So, when you mentioned rivalries, certainly McLean and LaBeouf, but Girard, Fairview. But that was the neat thing about the ECL. Like, every week was a big week, and it didn't matter who you were playing. You would play Harbor Creek one week, and you're like, okay, well, next week we got Northeast. And after that, we've got Seneca. So every week was full house, and every week was a rival. But of course, some of them were a little bit bigger than others, but it was just a great, great league.
Red and White in the ECL era available now. Make sure to get yours. It's the story of General McLean through the ECL league. And now, Gary, I want to end with this because we've seen the maturation of the team. We've seen the maturation of the rivalry, but I want to get your thoughts just on whether it's Gary the writer, Gary the fan, Gary the coach. When you started writing this book and you started back decades ago and watching and reading and studying how General McLean and these teams in the ECL succeeded, how has the game changed in your mind? I mean, there are obvious answers in terms of play style and whatnot, but how have you seen the game change and evolve from the years that you started General McLean in this book to where you are now, and just what we've seen in the evolution of football in Erie County?
Well, it certainly seems to me like things are much, much more wide open now. Matter of fact, back in the 60s, when I was doing the research, I would read the articles, and it seemed like every week there was a different guy throwing a touchdown pass. And it finally occurred to me, I'm like, I really do think that the halfback pass was how they passed the ball back then, or at least a lot of teams. Maybe it was a surprise thing. But yeah, I think most teams were just run the ball, grind it out, and maybe pass when there was nothing else that was working that day. You know, maybe the field conditions were a factor too. And now that there's turf a lot of teams have turf. That might be why teams have been more accepting of spreading it out and things like that. Some other teams have been slow to adapt. It's primarily a running team. But I think that's probably the biggest thing. And I think probably the speed, and kids are bigger today too. But yeah, as a matter of fact, I've seen some rosters from years gone by from McLean. And I was laughing. This one guy in particular that I remember, he was a great center, 5'5", 137 pounds. And I'm like, that's just crazy to me. I mean, if you're that size now, you're a wideout. So,
Right.
Yeah. I would say that's probably the biggest differences.
Yeah, boy, have times changed. You almost have to be double that, both height and weight wise, to have any chance to be on the line nowadays. Yeah,
Sure,
things have
sure.
more. No question about that. Gary, before we let you go here, give your book a plug here, where you can go to get your copy of Red and White in the ECL era.
Well, there's really only one place. I've done it through Amazon. It's just easy for me as an author to do it that way. So you just simply go to Amazon, type in General McLean in the search bar, and it will be the first thing that comes up in the search results.
Great stuff as always from Gary Dawn. And again, make sure to get Red and White in the ECL era available now on Amazon. If you're a General McLean or just an Erie County football fan, he did a great job. It's just an incredible book detailing all the years of General McLean football in the ECL. And there are a lot of great stories as well with other teams that they played in that decades-long stretch as well. Well, great episode tonight. Nick Artman giving his top 5 high school football interesting teams for this year. I had a few teams of mine as well. Some of us were the same. The Buffalo Bills, should we be worried? Maybe not yet, but we might get there. We'll have to see. Next show is Monday morning, 9 a.m. Paul Adams is going to take you the way with Flagship City Sports Talk as we get ready for the middle of August. It's hard to believe it's already here. Hopefully you're in your last few weeks of summer fun in. We certainly are. Enjoy the rest of your week, everybody. Have a wonderful, safe weekend. We will see you all coming up next Monday. Until then, adios. This has been the Gem City Sports Podcast Network, brought to you by Remus Investments. Like, follow, subscribe. We love talking to you guys. We hope you love listening to us, too. Take care, everybody. We'll see you.